Hi there, and thank you for tuning in to the Social Circus, where every week we dive into a variety of topics covering social media, mindset, and how to run your business. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Hello, my lovely listeners, and welcome to your weekly dose of the Social Circus. Today's guest is an absolute powerhouse when it comes to money mindset and creating a business that feels abundant and aligned. Denise Duffield-Thomas is the go-to money mentor for a new wave of online entrepreneurs, helping them break through their money blocks, charge what they're worth, and design a first-class life on their own terms. She's the author of Lucky Bitch, Get Rich Lucky Bitch, and her latest book, Chill and Prosper, where she says her signature, funny, and no BS approach to wealth and success without the burnout. Denise has supported over 8,500 students inside her Money Bootcamp, helping them to shift their mindset and step into their abundance with ease. She is also a self-confessed, a lazy introvert, a Hay House author, an unbusy mum of 3, and when she's not talking about money, she's either tending to her rose farm or soaking up the sunshine on the beach in Australia. I'm so excited to have you here today. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And as you're talking, I'm like, I need to update my bio because we've had 10,000 people through Money Bootcamp now. And it is exciting. And in the last, about a year and a half ago, I sold my beach house and I'm about to sell my rose farm. So I'm like, and I have to say, even unbusy, I'm like, oh, my kids are at that stage now where life is a bit busier with all of their activities. So I need to make tweaks on that to be real, truly in integrity.
I was actually thinking when I was reading, I was like, I'm pretty sure you've sold your beach house, but I figured you're still living kind of by the beach. And I knew your rose farm was up for sale, which is exciting, lots of changes. I have to say for all of my listeners, and for anyone who's worked with me, you have heard me quote Denise. She's been a mentor to me. I was just telling her I joined bootcamp back in 2014, so I'm one of her OG boot campers. And I think I've done your boot camp every year in my business as kind of an activity that I do at the beginning of the year to kind of help me find all those new blocks. So I'm really excited to have you here today. I will try not to fangirl too hard on you. But my favorite question I always like to ask my guests is, what got you started in your business? And I know you've had a really exciting kind of journey into entrepreneurship.
Well, it depends on how far you really want to go back because I started my first business when I was 9, and it was making bracelets. And I would ride around on my bike and I'd be like, hey, look at my cool bracelet. And I definitely spent a lot of my school years always finding some little random scheme. So I got a typewriter for my 9th birthday. And it was an Olivetti electric typewriter. And this blew my mind because my mum was a single mum. She never had a lot of money and she actually was never really good at buying presents. And so this felt like, wow, she really sees me, because I was just that creative kind of kid. And so one of my things was, if a letter is typed, it is legit, right? So
Yes.
I was like, I know Kylie Minogue, she's my cousin, and I can get fan letters for $5. And so it was like a typed letter. And then I think I must have signed Kylie Minogue. I don't remember how many I sold.
I love
it. But I was always kind of like, hey guys, let's sell horse poo. So it'd be like, come over to my, house. I had a horse for a very short period of time because my mum married a wealthy man for a short period of time. And I'd get them to like do the pick horse poo up, but I was not good at completing and finishing things. Yeah. So it'd be like, everyone bring your stuff around my house. We'll have a really big garage sale. And then 6 months later, my mum would just throw everything away. And so that's kind of how I was as a young person. And I did business studies for my final exams and I got really good marks in that. And so I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I went to university and did a marketing degree. And then my whole 20s was trying to figure out, what do you do? Like, what's my business? And It was so frustrating to me because I was like, I'm clearly creative and I have all of these ideas, but I don't know how to translate that into anything real. And I remember thinking, okay, solve a problem, right? So I was living in London and I was going, there's no hooks in any of these bathrooms. There's no hooks. Like, okay, this is my business. I'm going to be the toilet hook queen. And, but they're just, I think my ambition and my excitement was just at the wrong time, because it wasn't until like online business sort of stuff came into play that I was like, I could do something about it, and I think you remember when Fiverr first came out,
Yes.
and I remember you could pay just people to just do ridiculous things. So I paid someone to do a business jingle for me dressed as a banana. And I think if that was around when I was at university, that's what I would have been doing. I would have been like, I am going to just make things on Fiverr. I'll do things on Fiverr. But I was just a little bit too early for all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, but in early 2000s, I found out about this thing called ebooks, and I was like, well, this is what I'm going to do. And I was living in London, I was single, and I was doing internet dating, which was a very new thing. And I was like, man, people suck at this. Like, I'm going to create a system for it. And so I did like a whole like marketing funnel kind of system where I was like, I'll message 100 guys. And then, it really came out like my marketing funnels now, where it was like, 100 got the initial message and maybe 50% got a reply, second reply, and I was cutting and pasting stuff. And then I started dating, and I was batching my dating. So I'd have a 6 p.m. and an 8 p.m. date at the same place every time. It was like we'd meet at a joke store in Leicester Square and then go upstairs and then have play a game of pool. And then I ended up dating, 2 guys seriously out of that 100. And so I was like, I'm going to write a book about this. And ebooks were very new. So I couldn't just do a PDF and,
Work it out to the world.
send it to people. Like, you couldn't do it. So I had to so there was this ebook broker, and they did the back end technology for me. And this was 2002. So it was super, super new. And then I don't know, I just floundered through all of my 20s. I would go into corporate life, realize I hated it, jump out impulsively, try and start something, didn't work. And so like, it really wasn't until kind of 2009 that the technology caught up again for me to be able to, I ran a group coaching program. I had one person on it. And even the technology then of doing teleseminars was really hard. You had to call in. It was like $1 a minute to run a seminar for somebody. You had to, it was really hard to host a course too. So everyone had the same password. There's just a lot of things like that. And so they were my early business kind of ideas, I guess. And then I kind of got into my 30s, and I think then the technology kind of caught up with probably what I could have done as a kid, of just wanting to motivate people and share information. And that's what I was like as a kid. I was like, let's write our goals down in our journal, because Oprah had an episode about writing stuff down in your journal. And so I really consider myself so lucky, because I know that there would have been women in my family who were creative and entrepreneurial, but they didn't have any mechanism to be able to do it.
Yes, it's changed so much. Oh, thank you for that lovely backstory. And I was thinking, as you were telling your story, obviously, and you share this really openly in your podcast and in your books as well, about your childhood and how it was a very turbulent ride in terms of the finances. And that obviously created for you a lot of money blocks. So for my audience that may not have heard of money blocks, goodness, if you're in business and haven't heard of money blocks, this is going to be a game changer. What are money blocks, and how did they sort of show up for you?
Well, money blocks are any mindset issues or sabotages, especially recurring sabotages that you have around money. And so what I do in my program is help people figure what some of those patterns are. And a lot of them do come from our childhood. So yes, I grew up with no money. And so I thought my money blocks were a lack of money, but they weren't. And it wasn't until I've worked with thousands and thousands of people that I realized that it doesn't really have a big correlation to how much money you had as a kid to what your money blocks are, because families are weird. We all have our own stuff and our own stories about money. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I've always said to people, well, did you grow up, middle class? Were you poor? Were you rich? Whatever.
Yeah.
And what I find is fascinating is that's actually not a simple answer. Because sometimes people will say, you know what, I felt like we were really wealthy. And it's only now that I realized that we had no money. But the way that my parents talked about, we were so lucky and, we were really generous. And actually, I always felt really taken care of.
Mm.
Or I'll hear people say, you know what? I realized that we were middle class, but I got sent to this private school and I was the poor kid.
Yes.
And so I always felt like I didn't have the right shoes, or I felt less than. Or I hear from people who say, we were really wealthy, but my family always talked about money in such a way that felt like it was really scarce. And I was terrified that we were going to go bankrupt, but actually we had a lot of money. And, you know, I've heard so many different permutations of those stories. So what I realized that often is, the way that our family talked about money really shapes us as adults. The contrast of what we had versus other people, especially when you get to, the tween and beyond stage.
Yeah.
Very aware of that stuff. But also, just the things, the unspoken rules in our family. So if you were told from a really young age, it's very impolite to talk about money. It's rude, it's couth, it's uncouth, it's a horrible thing. You might have been told this explicitly, or it could have been just a very unspoken thing.
Yes.
Then what I like to do then is to try and help people find those through lines and to go, okay, well, what's happening in your life now that could be, a direct consequence of either a very specific time where you were told off for that, or just a more general feeling. And then it could be, I can't set my prices because I can't even say a number.
Yes.
Because it's so rude. I can't send out invoices. I cannot ask for money. If someone doesn't pay me, I never mention it again. And so this is the work that I do. It's very unscientific in those ways, but it's curiosity and compassion. Because when you can go, oh my God, of course it's going to be hard for me to send out an invoice.
Yes.
Because every part of my life is saying, this is disgusting, this is rude. And so then, what we do in Money Bootcamp is that we unpack that, we create new stories, we hear from lots of different experiences, we create pattern interrupters, we make it safe for our nervous system, we make it safe for ourselves to be able to talk about money. And everyone's got their own particular ones. And I would say that there's some general ones too, especially I see it in generations sometimes.
Yes.
What was going on for women at that time, because I coach mostly women. And it's fascinating to see, just all the things that have influenced us. I also love hearing from different professions, because when you're with a group of people, whether it's your family or, a profession or a training, you'll get health professionals who have this martyr complex because their instructors have said to them, I hope you're not going into this for the money.
Yes.
And so then they feel shamed about it. You've got, dance teachers who feel like they can't charge because they're supposed to be in it for the love of dance. You've got people who are, there's so many examples.
I was thinking of professions that have an upper limit on what you can charge. So, for example, someone who does like healing or something, you can only charge this much because people will never pay anymore. It doesn't matter how good you are. That's all people will pay.
Yes, or people are in pain, so I want to help them.
Yes.
Or everyone should have access to this. And so I love finding the different nuances. And then I did an interview series where I interviewed a few people from the same country.
Yep.
And that was fascinating. And I was speaking to like a whole bunch of British people, and we were saying like one of the unspoken values of Britain is patience, queuing.
Oh, I know. They love it.
They love queuing, right? And so I was like, well, then let's talk about how this could be showing up in your business. Do you feel like you have to wait your turn? Do you feel like other people who started before you should succeed before you? Do you feel like people who are older than you or your mentors, you can't surpass them? Do you feel like you have to wait to be invited for things because it's kind of crass and American to put yourself forward for things?
Yeah.
And that was fascinating. And then, you could I could just go on forever. It's just fascinating. Like I went,
It's
I even
fascinating.
spoke. It's fascinating. I was asked to speak at a builders mastermind, like people who have building companies, like
Yeah.
construction companies, because a friend of mine, her husband runs a mastermind for those guys, and he had COVID, and they're like, "Can you please?" And I was like, normally I would never, speak to men necessarily, but what was fascinating, it's the same stuff we talk about in Money Bootcamp, but it was like a lot of them were second generation builders. And so they were like, my dad was on the tools until he was 80,
Wow.
so I feel like I have to work as hard as my youngest apprentice. And I feel bad because I've, been successful, but I still have to feel like one of the blokes.
Yes.
And I loved hearing their stories and seeing them have those light bulb moments,
Yes.
and having that compassion for themselves. So I think now, like 90% of the work that I do now is just like being really inappropriately nosy about people's lives.
Oh, I love that though, because it's something like you say, we're not taught this, and we're not encouraged to have conversations about it. And I remember when I joined your boot camp, I've been in business for I think nearly 3 years, and you'll laugh at this. I'd never said what I charge as an hourly rate as a coach aloud to a client when they asked. So I'd be so embarrassed. I would send an email with a quote on it, and that just it says all over, I'm not confident in my pricing, and I don't believe I'm worth that. And so when I joined Bootcamp, one of the first things I worked through was talking about my pricing, because, of course, it's rude to talk about money. That was one of my things. So that was such a big game changer for me. And it sounds so small, but now if someone asks me what I charge, I can say it so confidently, and I have no reservations, and I'm not ashamed of it. And I want to say to people sometimes it takes so much work to get to that point of just being able to say what you charge. And I don't think you're aware of it so much when you're maybe an employee in a role, rather than when you're an entrepreneur and you have to stand behind everything that you do. It's really different. Um, Another thing I'd love to talk to you about, because I've obviously watched you grow and flourish over the years as one of your bootcamp members. And one of the things that has always inspired me about you is the way in which you've parented, and the way in which you approach business in this very chill fashion, and take that kind of hustle culture out, which I feel like we're seeing so much of at the moment with hard economic times. And I guess my thoughts are on this is how do you do it? Like when it's times are tough and you feel like you've got to bring in the money, we need to bring that ease to our business. So can you share a little bit of your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I'm I'm not anti-hustle in lots of ways, because I think sometimes then people think, "Oh, do I do nothing?" Or do I just like manifest things? And I am very clear with people. I say marketing is manifesting.
Yeah.
Manifesting is just to make things real. It's not necessarily always about magic, even though we all know when you put yourself and do those things, sometimes magical things do happen. Absolutely.
Yes.
But the I call it chussle, which does not roll off the tongue very nicely, but it is that chilled hustle. And what I mean by that is to be very clear in what you're good at and what you're not.
Yes.
That is half the battle, right? Because we often create and design our businesses based on other people's strengths or other people's ideas. So I think that is huge, is to know who you are, know who you can serve, not try and do everything and not
Yeah.
try and be everything to everyone. A huge part of that is boundaries too, because I often think, like, I've got a massive capacity for work.
Yes.
I really do. What burns me out though is not always the work, it's the kind of work that you're doing.
Yes.
And if you're feeling resentful, if you're overgiving, if there's not an energetic exchange, like you can get burnt out so quickly.
Yes.
And so it's literally being intentional. What is the right thing to do? And especially in times like this where it is harder. And I don't want to gaslight anyone about this, right? Because
Yes.
there is a massive trickle down effect where if there's, instability, or if people's mortgages are higher, which of course has happened in Australia, people have to cut back on things.
Yeah.
And it's then has a massive trickle to small business, and it is a real thing, right? So then in those times, even more so, you can't be everything to everyone.
Yes.
You you can't do a million things. you have to really, really focus. And I had this little board made up for Mark. You know those little light boards that you put letters in?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And it says sell more boot camps, because I think sometimes when you are feeling that scarcity that comes up, and that could be triggering stuff from your childhood,
Yeah.
and could be triggering old money blocks of going, something bad's going to happen. Then you have to focus, what can I do, rather than finding lots of new things? Because this is what Mark will do when he's feeling scarce. He'll go, maybe we should sell our mastermind. Maybe we should do an event. And I go, but we have this amazing program that can help so many people. So I made it up for him to go sell more boot camps. So when he goes, what? I go, do that thing, and then, do the thing. And then you do have to sometimes be a little bit delusional, but remind yourself, there's so many clients out there, and actually I don't even need that many of them. But when we're feeling scarce and we have a million tabs literally and metaphorically open in our brain, we don't know what to do. We don't know where to turn. So I often will say to people, like, before we even take action, let's do some decluttering. And this can take many forms. So for some people is, what obligations do you have in your life that are draining you right now? And, it could be volunteer things that you go, it's not forever that I'm going to put this down, but I am going to put this down for now. It could be literally going through your bank account and going, do we need those subscriptions right now? It can even be, and this is the hard thing, I think, for women, to go, do I need this amount of staff? Like, do I need to do some decluttering around that? Or literally around your house, that can have a massive energy shift as well, to go, you know what, I'm so overwhelmed. So let's simplify. Maybe we don't, I don't know, like maybe the kids don't have to make their bed every morning, and that's okay for now. It's like dropping standards.
There's so much you can let go. I have a saying in my house, no one's going to die. Like things that you can let go of, no one's going to die. And if someone is, then probably need to do that. But by and large, you can let a lot go. And I know for me, being a busy entrepreneur and running around my family and working at home with my husband, there are so many things we've let go. And my children are now, one's an adult, one's a baby adult. They now have learned all these kind of great lessons about money that I just think they've watched us do this, and they've watched us go, actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you hang out the clothes on the line. It doesn't matter if the clothes stay on the line for 2 days. It doesn't matter if we don't make dinner every night. There's all sorts of things you can let go of that I think are really great lessons for our children to see us doing. And I've loved being part of your boot camp and allowing my children to grow up with that around them as well.
Honestly, I think sometimes we do overcomplicate things. And it's so interesting that you said the washing, because there was, I had a full-time housekeeper for most of those years that I was building Money Bootcamp, and she moved away last year and I haven't replaced her. So I just got a normal, cleaner that comes once a fortnight, just like, most normal families do. So I was like, I'm going to do the laundry because I've got this bandwidth now. And at first I was literally being so anal about it. And I was creating these systems for myself. And then I'm like, it's okay because I was going, okay, I've got a light basket, but then there's some things that are like white, and there's things that are like pink. Like, do I wait for a whole pink load? And it's just those things, we're so hard on ourselves. And no one, like, literally nothing bad happens if you mix stuff. I'm still not with mixing like lights and darks.
No, that ain't it. We'll allow that.
Yes. But I'll give you a perfect example of, we've got the Newcastle show, the local show. And last year I submitted a cross stitch for it, and it was just a great, creative project. But the kids were walking around in the kids section. They were going, that's shit. I could do better. And I was like, okay, so next year submit stuff, right?
Yes.
So then they had created some stuff. I had done some stuff, and I was like, really put myself in a tizzy around it, because I was going, I haven't, framed my cross stitch yet. I haven't done all this stuff. And the whole weekend I was stressing about it. I kept thinking, I'll just get up really early and do it. It was Willow's birthday. And then it got to Monday morning and I went, I'm in the podcast studio all day, but I still have to get this, this cross stitch in. And I looked up the thing and I went, oh my God, I've missed the deadline for the art. That was last week. And it's just the craft stuff today. And I went, what am I doing? I do not have to do this. And I'd spent all weekend feeling bad about it, like looking up, is office work open at 10 o'clock at night so I can go get the matting? And I went, this is all self-inflicted.
Yeah.
Absolutely self-inflicted. And I can choose not to do it. And I said to the kids, I'm really sorry, guys. I missed the deadline to submit your artwork. And my daughter was like, it's okay. Don't feel bad. And I went, thank you. But I was feeling really bad. And then
So interesting.
Mark does the same thing. At one point, not only were we, launching the business and doing all this stuff and having multiple other businesses, he was president of the PNC.
Good.
And he taught ethics at the school too. He was a volunteer ethics teacher. And this year, we've been so mindful about right-sizing our life and taking out commitments. And he said at the new school, he was like, I'm not going to join the PNC this year. Because he knows at the new school, he'll come out and he'll be president again, right? And it was a really big moment for us to go, wow, we don't have to do all the things. And I know that so many people who listen to this show, you are doing all the things and you feel bad about it. And it's like, it's okay to buy the cake that's already made from Coles and chuck some stuff on top of it. You don't have to always make things from scratch. You don't always have to be the perfect, friend and gift giver and things like that. It's okay just to not. And it's very liberating, but also I think it's also in service of, yes, we have to probably be more intentional about money at the moment when things are a little bit trickier, but you want to do it and still have bandwidth to feel abundant, not racing around and trying to do all the things at the same time, because you can't do it.
I love that. Great advice, Denise. Thank you so much. I think that feels like a really nice moment for us to pause. Otherwise, I will sit and listen to you talk all day. And I know you're a very busy lady.
I'm not busy. I hate the word busy.
Oh, well, you said you were more of a busy mom, so we'll take that. But for all my listeners, I know that you have 2 amazing ways in which people can work with you. Can you share a little bit about Bootcamp and Sacred Money Archetypes?
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. You have to have me on again to talk about money archetypes.
Love to.
It's so fascinating. So I am certified in this amazing method called Sacred Money Archetypes, but it's kind of like astrology / personality test for your money. And there's 8 different personality types, and each of them have very specific money blocks and sabotages. And it's fascinating when you start to delve into that and to understand the challenges of your personality. I'm a ruler. My challenge is always overwork and saying yes to things. And so you can take the free quiz at denisedt.com/quiz. You get a free workshop with that to understand your sabotages in relation to your money archetype. So that's a really fun one. And then Money Bootcamp is more of my ongoing community where we have calls every month. We dive into a particular topic, and it is a safe place to be able to talk about money, be surrounded by people who are in that conversation about money, and to have the tools and, the exercises to go through to discover and understand all of those money blocks. And that's at denisedt.com/bootcamp. And that's, it's a beautiful place, I think, to explore those things.
Yeah, I've loved being part of Bootcamp and watching people in there who've grown and flourished, and people sharing their vulnerabilities and their successes, because I think sometimes we're ashamed to share our successes as business, otherwise we feel like we're bragging. So I love being part of Bootcamp. I think it's been absolutely pivotal in so many moments in my business and my life and my family. So thank you so much for your time today, Denise. It's been a delight to have you on to talk all things money mindset. It's lovely to actually meet you online as well. And all of my listeners,
Sarah.
Pleasure. For all of my listeners, the links that Denise has mentioned will also be in the show notes, so make sure you look those up, and do follow Denise and check out her books as well. But Denise, thank you for your time today. It's been a joy having you on the show.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks. And to all my lovely listeners, I'll catch you the same time next week on the Social Circus.
Thanks
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Social Circus. As your host, Sarah Thompson, I am thrilled that you've chosen to spend your time hanging out with me. I would be so grateful if you could spare an extra moment to go and leave me a review on your favorite podcasting platform. And if you even felt more excited, you could share my podcast with your friends who you think would get great value from it. Thanks so much again for tuning in.